Hi there, Dave Markham here for the Brockporter. I'm reading the September 18th, 2011 Suburban News. Got a little article in here by Christina Gabalski entitled, Fire District Vote May Be Set for Late November. Yeah, and then Connie goes on, Mayor Constaneta, and says, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. Kind of depends on what the Monroe County Board of Elections says about that. And then she goes on and says the public hearing on September 6th, they did a quote-unquote excellent job in the presentation. And then she goes on and she says that the agreement of the village to get involved with the fire district, quote-unquote, has always been a financial decision, which is nonsense. Because she doesn't know the finances. I don't know how she can make that statement. And then she goes on and she says, quote, what we need to do to take care of safety, a fire district is what we need to do to take care of the safety in our community. It takes the politics out of it. No, it doesn't. It's just the opposite. The safety of our community has been grand. We've had an excellent fire department at the cheapest cost of any town in Monroe County or village. That's the fact. And Supervisor Kimball from the town of Clarkson and Supervisor Milner from the town of Sweden and you, Mayor Constaneta, have put the politics into this. It's shameful, really, what you've done, and nobody knows really why you have the agenda. So I'd like an explanation about that. Clarkson and Sweden claim that Brockport owes them $640,000 for surplus ambulance revenue. But then they turn around and they shit-can the Brockport Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and they gave the contracts to Monroe, a private ambulance company in Rochester. And they're not getting any surpluses, I don't think, unless Monroe's giving them kickbacks. That could be. But how do you complain about not getting a supposed $640,000 surplus shared with them from the Brockport Volunteer Ambulance Corps, and then turn around and give the contracts to a profit-making private company in Rochester? Is that the solution to the problem? That's question number one. Number two, if this is a legitimate grievance that Clarkson and Sweden have, why have they never taken legal action to collect the debt they claimed is owed to them? It's in the Memorandum of Understanding. And the Village of Brockport says it doesn't acknowledge their claim to those funds. So we'll pass over that and move on. But that was the whole reason that Supervisor Kimball and Supervisor Milner gave for wanting a fire district to begin with. And it's become transparently fraudulent. There's no basis to that claim. Now, if you have information otherwise, I think you owe it to the Brockport taxpayers to explain whether the Village of Brockport owes the town of Clarkson and the town of Sweden $640,000 from the Brockport Volunteer Ambulance revenue. Is that true or is that not true? Don't we have an attorney on our staff? And then they go on and they make an equally bogus claim that the Village of Brockport owes the town of Clarkson and the town of Sweden a certain portion of the workman's comp premiums that were reimbursed to the village. That's equally bogus. So, the supervisor of Clarkson, supervisor of Sweden have made these bogus claims that supposedly was the basis for wanting to have their own fire district because they were improperly dealt with Brockport. That's transparently false at this point. And I think, Mayor Constaneta, you owe the taxpayers of Brockport some explanation about where the village stands legally in terms of those false demands. Secondly, I'd like to know what the value of the Brockport Fire Department buildings, equipment, trucks, gear that were given away. I'd like you to do an inventory and an audit on the value of that property which you have so generously agreed to give to the fire district. That's our property, Village of Taxpayers' property. I'd like to know what it's valued at. Simple question. Would take an inventory and an audit. You owe it to us to answer that question. Number two, I'd like to know how giving away what some people estimated is $5.5 million of fire department property, what's the impact of that on the Village of Brockport's financial viability? How does that affect our balance sheet? How does that affect our credit rating? How is it going to affect our ability to borrow funds or obtain bonds if we have capital projects in the future or needed a line of credit? I'd like to know. I'm concerned that you're bankrupting the village, giving away $5.5 million of assets, if that's the correct number. So what's the answer to the question? How does giving away millions of dollars of assets affect the financial viability and credit rating of the village? Next, I'd like to know what the forecasted cost of the fire protection services would be to residents of the Village of Brockport under both models, if we continued with a fire protection district or if we went with a fire district. Studies have shown that within 5 years of the formation of a fire district, fire taxes go up 40 to 50%. You're saying that we have to do this because it's the only financially responsible way to provide fire protection services. Most experts disagree. They say that's not true. I have seen no financial projections at all from anybody. I'd like you to answer that question. Next, I'd like to know, again, going back, why Clarkson and Sweden destroyed the Brockport Volunteer Ambulance Corps. Cost them no money. They said it was excellent service, and yet they gave their contracts to a profit-making ambulance company in Rochester. We've never had an explanation for why that was done. I think you owe it to Brockport residents, especially to the ambulance corps members who essentially were laid off. And if Sweden and Clarkson could do that to the Brockport ambulance corpsmen, what could they do to the firefighters in the Brockport Firefighters Association? That's a serious concern. Kent Blair, Trustee Blair, was quoted in the minutes of one of the Brockport Village board meetings saying that morale was low, and I could see why. And what was the explanation for doing that? I think the volunteers and the citizens of Brockport deserve an explanation. Next, I'd like to know how the village trustees think the dissolution of the Village of Brockport Fire Department is going to affect the pride and culture of the people in the Village of Brockport. You have an anthropologist who's on your board, Trustee Blackman. It's my understanding this is her specialty. So maybe she could use some of her professional skills in an attempt to determine the degree to which the loss of the Brockport Fire Department, which has been around for 134 years, will have on the pride and the culture of the Village of Brockport. And what does it mean for the Village of Brockport's future? That's a serious question, not just an academic question. All right? You got your homework. I want answers to all those questions. What's the value of the fire department property? What's it going to cost to operate fire protection services 5 years from now under both models? How's it going to affect the balance sheet of Brockport when you give away millions of dollars of assets? Why did Clarkson and Sweden change their contracts for ambulance services from Brockport to Monroe Ambulance? How is this change going to affect the pride and the culture of the village of Brockport? And what does it mean for the future of our village? And how legitimate or appropriate were the claims that Supervisor Kimball and Supervisor Milner made that the village of Brockport misused over almost $750,000 that really belonged to them? Serious questions, none of which got covered at the hearing, by the way. Maybe you could have an information meeting and address those issues. If you want to send me an email, or you can make a comment on this article on the blog, or if you want to write any of you trustees, Blair, Hunsinger, Hannon, Blackman, Constaneta, you want to answer any of those questions and write an article or an editorial piece, I'd be happy to publish it here on the Brockporter without editing it. You know, you can say whatever you want to say. I really want the answer. Or give me a call. I'm at 585-637-0040. 585-637-0040. Very legitimate questions. We need the answers before the referendum is voted on at the special election. Thanks for listening. It's Dave Markham for the Brockporter. Peace.